Hi, folks. Can you hear me in the back? We good? Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming out in numbers. We love to see it. That's great. First of all, hi. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to Green Apple Books on the Park. Thank you for joining us for our celebration of Brian Tierney's Rise and Float. So much for coming out and supporting Brian. We're also joined tonight by William Brewer, Noah Warren, and Randall Mann. Let's give it up for them. If anyone's looking for seats, there are some in the front, there's some right here, anywhere. People get nervous about sitting in the front like it's class or something. I don't know, but don't be shy. We're all very friendly. So if you want to sit, you're welcome to do so. If you want to stand, feel free. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. I wanted to tell you about a couple of upcoming events that we have. I'll stick to one. Let's get to the real stuff. I'll stick to one. So next Friday, February 18th, we have a virtual event with Sheila Heti and Elif Batuman for Heti's new novel, Pure Color, which is, I can't recommend it enough. It's like so wonderful. It is a ticketed event, but the ticket comes with a copy of the book. So you get to hear Sheila Heti and Elif Batuman talk about her book, and you get a copy of the book and it's signed, so consider it. And that is a virtual event. It's next Friday, February 18th, online wherever you will be. So consider that. You can find more info about that on our website at greenapplebooks.com. Another thing, I'm not above it, please do buy books if you are able. Please do buy books from us if you are able. When you buy books from us, you help us put on events such as these. When you buy things from us, you help keep us here. So thanks very much for that. You also support the artists that put so much time and effort into making these books that you buy. So something to consider. Another last bit of housekeeping before I get to the real meat of the subject. Please do keep your masks on during the event. I so appreciate it. Thank you all for being cool about it. We're going to give our authors the grace to take their masks off for the evening. So that's why we're keeping ours on as like a safer measure. So thank you for being cool. Okay, we're also going to have a Q&A to follow with Brian at the end of the readings tonight. So think of some questions during the evening as things come up. Okay. Whew. I didn't drink enough water before I started doing this. Okay, without further ado, I'd like to introduce the four writers that are joining us this evening. First, we have William Brewer, whose debut novel, The Red Arrow, you can pre-order here at Green Apple Books, is coming out from Knopf on May of this year, in May of this year. So that's something to look forward to. And his first book, I Know You're Kind, which is already here, was a winner of the National Poetry Series. Formerly a Stegner Fellow, he's currently a Jones Lecturer at Stanford and lives in Oakland. Please do welcome William Brewer. Yay. Next, we have Noah Warren, who's the author of The Complete Stories and The Destroyer in the Glass, chosen by Carl Phillips for the 2016 Yale Series of Younger Poets. His work has been supported by fellowships from Yale, Stanford, New Literary Project, and the Arts Research Center. He's a PhD candidate in English at UC Berkeley, where he coordinates the Lunch Poems reading series. Please welcome Noah Warren. Poet Randall Mann is the author of Complaint in the Garden, Breakfast with Tom Gunn, finalist for the Lambda Literary Award and the California Book Award, Straight Razor, Proprietary, and A Better Life. He is also the author of a book of criticism, The Illusion of Intimacy on Poetry, as well as co-author of the textbook Writing Poems. He received the 2013 J. Howard and Barbara M.J. Wood Prize from Poetry and lives in San Francisco. Please do welcome Randall Mann. Yeah. And last but most certainly not least, Brian Tierney's poetry and prose have appeared in such journals as Paris Review, Kenyon Review, the Adroit Journal, and others. A former Wallace Stegner Fellow at Stanford University and a graduate of the Bennington College MFA Writing Seminar. He was named among Narrative Magazine's 30 Below 30 in 2013. and is a winner of the 2018 George Bogan Memorial Award from the Poetry Society of America. Raised in Philadelphia, he lives in Oakland, California, where he teaches poetry at the Writing Salon. His collection, Rise and Float, is the reason we are here this evening. Please do welcome Brian Tierney.
Hello. You can hear me? Yeah, cool. I'm just going to read two poems because I haven't written a poem in 2 years. But I've been writing books. I've been very busy, just not writing poems. And mainly, I just want to hear Brian. And I'm a very lucky person in a lot of ways, but I'm very lucky to have Brian as one of my closest friends. Really, it would be an amazing friend to have, even if he wasn't a writer. But the fact that he's an exceptional writer makes it really something special. And he's made a severe impact on my life and my work. And I'm very honored to be here to celebrate you, Brian. Thank you for all your hard work and congratulations to you. I love you. My first poem is called Oakland. Once again, a spiritual feeling. Winter rains, 2 months late, douse a burning condo complex. No one lived there yet, so no one died, meaning none of us watching will have to choose whether to remember or forget this. Firemen walk the edge of the ashes, chewing toothpicks. Babies stare through the clear coverings of their strollers, nannies behind them crossing themselves with one hand, holding an umbrella with the other. It's exciting being alive. Suddenly, I want to drink a Viennese lager in a fluted glass as long as my forearm and have sex. I want to say what I'm seeing is something revealed to me, but to say it would interrupt the music of the hissing timber, the redwoods sucking their drink from the dirt like machines. And why revealed to me, who has been so terrible, who judges the plastic surgeon, who stepped out of his office to stare, his face, the face he gives to everyone who visits him, sculpted, painted, indifferent, like the visage on a sarcophagus, surrounded in an acropolis by a million birds, preserved, but since made extinct, all quiet under sand. And then this next one is a longer poem, but it's actually very fast. And it's called Anthony Bourdain, and it's California, 2018. The more money we come across, the less tarot we do. The more we chew in silence, staring at palm trees glazed red on wall tiles, the heads of actual palms lining the drive-through, masked with smoke from burning paradise. For a week, it's lined our lungs. Driving home, I strain to see the exit signs and toll booth structures as the radio debates ways to stop the kids from smoking jewels between advertisements for cleaning solutions I'll use after the rains have come to make our rooms smell like rooms I've never lived in, which are the rooms I most prefer. 2 months now, we've been married. It feels the same, but different. Men stopped mentioning fucking the same thing forever, and everyone else started asking about the future. Sometimes just saying the word for no reason. I'd compliment the Beaujolais, and then in the future, you should consider looking into over and over until the word began to radiate in my mind. I find myself spelling it out letter by letter on the roof of my mouth while up late folding t-shirts. And now it's 2 and I'm beside you in bed, envisioning the ripples on my celestial sleepy time herbal tea as I dropped in my CBD oil, meaning both products have failed me once again, and I feel like I deserve it. For 10 years, I fell asleep watching him wander old world cities and chew the fattened parts of animals. But he's been dead since June. Now I can't get through an episode. The future like a residue on every frame, how it was there the whole time, but I failed to see it. We felt like him, we said once in a foreign country, after a farmer directed us into a cave. At its end, a secret altar carved into the limestone by the once persecuted, candles burning in little scooped out shelves of rock, a bowl of oil, a vacant space meant for a holy text. To get there, the farmer told us to walk until we feel like we should stop, then walk some more. And so we did, until the sun glow of the entrance faded, then disappeared as we disappeared in blackness absolute, and stopped. And then you whispered, "Can you see me?" "No," I said, "but I know where you are." Congrats, bro.
Hi. Hi. Love hearing you read, Will. But Brian, this is your night, and it is really such an honor to be up here and such a delight to celebrate this book, which, you know, I've seen evolve and change, and I'm just, you know, reading through it, especially in its party dress, its little blue party dress that it's now wearing. You know, I had to stop myself over and over. It's really powerful, and there's a great art and a great sincerity and a great courage in it. And so I learned from you, and but tonight I'm here to celebrate you. So thank you for doing what you do. I'm going to read just a couple poems and then get out of the way of great talents. This little poem is called Novel. The first time he stared down a barrel, it was his fingers cradling that clot of steel. And I do mean stare down, because he was sitting cross-legged. The pistol was in his lap. He watched both his thumbs flutter around the stiff trigger. It was very awkward. Through thin shorts, he could feel the pebbled grip press heavily against his dick. He was very awkward. He remembers the long whitish stalks of summer grass swaying around him, broken under him, itching his shins and thick thighs. He remembers an overwhelming sense of boredom, and intuits now a lack of imagination that makes him pity that boy even more. Water is colorless when seen from the air. Odd. The patches the eye sees grow baroque as they pass upside down through experiential knowledge, where they're woven into gowns for the heart. Reflecting, he decides he would cheat again. Reflecting, he sees he mistook the play he was in for seduction. Normal touch, it is said, reminds the body where it ends. A limp quip begetting polite laughter, begetting chimp laughter, begetting a long howl of pain. Who will come and find him when he builds his cabin? Buds burst like bustiers on the twigs of May. Gravid elk strip the sapling apples. A clod of blue sky rinses his eyes. He will figure out how to make that borscht. Say lines of plane trees mill the air into bronze. Of the accordions along the dusty boulevard, too few wheeze the boredom of summer light. The difficulty of comparing a strong, noble horse with a jade has wilted his courage. In a late twist, too late in fact, he will discover the troubadours were cruelly mistaken about love. A scraggly dun with high withers stares down the coast road, where rugged islets unzip the scrolling waves. Above, light melts through woolen clouds. How could he be homesick? He has his habits. He lives inside them. Then I'll read two shorter, newer ones, and away we'll go. Grandmother. She was sitting. Her red hands shook like leaves until she pressed the knife against the cucumber skin and drew its glint toward her and caught its edge against the pad of her thumb. Another pale moon dropped into the china bowl. She died abruptly when I was 7. Her love for Pope John Paul II was severe, but her fury toward the country of her exile and the island she'd fled proved her true beatitude. A kind of sun in her small chest that illuminated and charred her and those nearest her, namely her daughter, my mother, the only one who, in her brother's version, could bear to take care of her. Years later, we sifted her over a cliff at Finisterre. How quietly she used to come in our door. And this is called Tin Man Soldier. It's that thing where you like dive off a wharf and stand like this and go very deep. At least it was for us. Tin Man Soldier. The smell of fish wandered the whole county. Down the coast in that time, winding around each cape and estuary, slowly in the Ranger, through the shrinking villages. I was made to sit. I heard mass offered in sing-song French, corrupted by isolation, of which I understood nothing. Worn black wood, ice-chipped light, knots of men talking outside the big doors after, and the ways the boys shied away from me. The way I blushed in yellow kitchens, pale green kitchens, kitchens where worn linoleum rose ragged up around the central stove. Night. The white and green lights of the cod fleet were steaming back from the banks. I had a strange talent. I could sense when the cows were in the spruce woods behind the house. Thanks.
So when I came up on Brian's manuscript, it was kind of late. It was like number 16 of about 18 or 20. And when I tell you, whew, when I opened and I read the first poem and I was like, please let the next one be good. Please let the next one be this good. Please let the next one be this good. Because, you know, sometimes it's a one and done sitch. And then it was just one. And I was like, every time I would turn the page, I would be pulling. I was like, keep going, keep going. And it just kept going. And so it's so exciting to be here for this launch. And it's so amazing to see the book and to see all the attention that's getting. And it's an argument for waiting, I'll tell you that, whether you want to wait or not. So anyway, I'm just going to read 3 poems. Stalking points. The coldest August in memory, a lack of trust. The lumber of a streetcar, neither here nor there, near nor far. The bros in boas are turning back to Burning Man. Sidewalks slumber. Take a number, allege your size. On my commute, I saw you edge a stranger raw, then sanitize those hands the minute you got off the F line. Aw. The rage, engage in character fights, dim the pain like all the lights. Who doesn't want to be walked by a brute in a suit out of the high rise? Who doesn't want to be stalked? Sorry for the cheesy phone thing. I hate myself right now. I just don't have a printer. So these are a couple new ones. Like we're competing with gremlins in the ceiling. It's fine. Luck. The daily spray of Castro Street gaily washes away indiscreet flushes before I wake. Not sure how I am now. I pull shade, my shadow, my train. Luck, this much is plain. Hatchet face, ratchet grin. The bin needs emptying again. Too little. It's true, I'm in the middle of life, so what? No myth, only math. I'm just glad I have enough change for laundry. An August mist is giving way to a single ray of sun. What else is there but comparison? A poem is staged like home, sunk like cost, a ladder like the color yes. When I was drunk, I fell engaged to a grad stud, Pilsner, sneer, gray matter, Molly, melancholy as the Cocteau twins, stay and fail and fail. I did and did, you know a man. And then one day I had to pay for might have beens. I think I can. The check is in the mail. And this is the last poem. A walk in the park. The palms along Dolores Street do not belong. The past looms like chat rooms. At the top of the park, a fellow suns himself. They call the hill the fruit shelf. The view from here ruthless, more or less. We play a game of name the building that was raised. Ding, ding. Downtown, off limits as a wish or noun. The weeds, like all the right, wrong words, or none. Swish, swish. I'd trade interest rate and day trade for clean your house in the nude days and date the broke actor days. Urinal talk. This is as close as we can get. Show, don't show, and yet, the city, part sunny aggression, part accent piece, rush, rush. The smoke, the dirt, the sky. I spy the gospel in the park, septic, lush as real money. Thank you. Congrats, Brian.
Hi, everyone. It took a long time to get here. But as Randy said, I think it was worth the wait. Everybody at home in the East who's watching, Mama. I'm going to read this poem for you to start. This is called Wormhole. All winter, the house groaned as in a very great depth, so that I often couldn't sleep. Then one day, as if the inverse of lightning, silence occurred, entrusted to the hour. I became each minute. I became every direction at once and fled from source and definite position and returned to my mother in plaid widow slippers, the blue flaking hallway at the end of which she'd wrapped gifts with the funny papers. And I felt again the weight of her life shaping my fate. When she paused, I paused. When she looked down, I looked as well, down into the garden, at the material consequence of a metaphysical truth. Memorial flowers we planted and left. These rooms will outlive you, I told her once in spite, when I was younger, not young, while she hung our shirts around and above a busted upright in the sun of a perfect angle, in which to watch was to surrender metamorphic mystery, but equally fear. Having set aside changes I could think of as tracks to be followed, future possibilities, arguments of a speculative nature, the roads with nobody on them and no one to remember anyone who was, I walked into that garden. When I bent to them, the impatience soured and gave a small yelp. Some of them had names I could not take with me. Night fell. The treasure I thought at the outset was wholeness was not wholeness. A passing car went white as the head of a match and was gone. So I just want to thank everybody for coming, and especially Randy and Noah and Will for sharing their immense talents. Will and Noah, thank you. You made the book possible. Randy, dream maker, as I've called you, thank you for believing. So the most important person here or otherwise is Jess, my wife. So I'm going to read a poem to her. You're the one I want to watch the last ships go down with. Dr. Redacted will tell me not to tell you this, like this, in a poem. How it's all right, love, that we don't love living. Even actors don't exactly love the spotlight they move through, as your sister, the actor, had told us. They just need to be lit for narrative motion to have meaning. As such it is, with artifice and embarrassment, I moved through fear to you tonight, where I had dreams a short nap ago about lines of poetry I struck through with everyday blues, month after month and the dream after dream. An attempt, I guess, to forget if I could. Defeat sometimes is defeat without purpose. The news at least tells me that much. I know now, in fact, we don't have to be brave. Not to survive a night like any we've looked on together. Watching blue-tinted snow once in a Kmart parking lot's giant two-headed lamp, with my father hooked up the street with no chance of waking. As many years ago now as how much longer I've lived with you than without. Forgive me again that I write you an elegy where a love poem should be. I was thinking of that line in Will's poem, it's exciting to be alive. That wasn't always the case for either of us, I think. But the process of this book was, painful. It took a toll to write, but it reminded me that I wanted to live. And I think, not that poetry has to do that, right? But if I hadn't waited as long and it didn't take as long, I don't think I could have remembered that life is the point, not death, even though this book is a lot about death and suffering. One thing that helped was therapy. So get it if you need it. This one's called Teletherapy. The light of that jet overhead is my mind you're seeing, so scintillant, unreachable. I'm never where my body is. The first law of dreaming is what isn't here isn't me. The second law is to show you what I see, is to show you how I feel. Aluminum siding the color of my skin, and wrapping the duplex where I lived as a boy by the ruins of a bridge for what could not be united. The message is frail. When I check my phone to remember I exist, and I shake it and shake it, I shake myself, as if to clear the etch-a-sketch of my face. If I'm dead inside, how would I know? How would a bulb check its own filament? So I had the great pleasure of working with Louise Lick, like a couple people here have. And I showed this poem to Louise one time at her home in Berkeley when she comes up here to work with Stegners. It had some animals in it. And she, you know, being Louise, she like ponderously reads it and looks at it in silence for like 2 minutes. And she starts to talk while staring at it. Says, this poem is so fucking corny. Of course, I lost it because you know Louise, that's kind of her. So I don't know. I took it as a little bit of a challenge. So this poem's called Hearses. A professor once wrote to me that to write of fruit or flowers or dreams, no matter how deftly, is the lowest form of metaphor after processions. Years later on the subject again, she that time indicted horses as well, most especially wild ones. Even the word wild itself, government arrogated. Legally defined, she meant not by what the wild horses are as a species, but the context by which they roam and where. And the manner in which the land was theirs, she meant, was cheapened, made public, and open space also owned. Plains I refuse to render or repopulate. Having read only yesterday how after the sweeps, which the Bureau of Land calls mustanging, the colonial Spanish feral descendants remain somehow sentient during dismemberment, later sold. I think the saw sound, though an obsession of itself after a while, must be otherwise mundane. No more than an idling truck full of Swedish fish my union friend drives from Hanover east to Clifton and Passaic, then over the Passaic River. Its color when rushing, a soiled denim like my grandpa wore on the Morris County sewer crew 30 plus years below the roads, breathing children's waste from St. Mary's. And eventually, the truck of red treats arriving unseen at the 7-Eleven, where a night clerk hands back loose heads of presidents the customer trusts by combined weight as the right change for a 10 or 2 5s. Lincoln and Roosevelt touching inside a pocket, jingling as they pass. Adjacent to the door, a smell of cold roses in a sad yellow bucket, similar to one I puked in one June, several times, after waking from a nightmare in which I was dying ignobly in the back of a cab, a heart attack on the Garden State Parkway, while a low-angled sunset beat the marshlands into flat metallic fields. And beneath my hand on my galloping breast, I felt the angles of a matchbook in my shirt pocket, with its blue font reading, thank you, please keep closed, as if against my heart lay the door to a stable. So I'm half Italian, half Irish, and I feel like that doubles the odds. I'm gonna cry at one of these poems. I heard John Ashbery cry. He used to cry apparently like every time he read, which I find so sweet, honestly. I'll do two more and then we'll have some questions, I guess. Breakdown. They raise swiftly each interstate mystery. The haunted house, the astrolabe, the sighing calliope, emptied of air, ornate as a head of state coffin on wheels, its gold-painted spokes, its faux ivory panels as chipped and streaked as my mother's teeth were then, which even in memory she can't afford to fix. This is in lieu of what I really want to say. In an hour, the children we were here will sleep, forgetting their bodies, forgetting umbilical air gun stalls, the feel of the handles and the reins of the horses speared through on poles, for travel unmounted, lying side by side like a Civil War still life together in the fennel, as tall as a person, taller even than parents among the patrons with their paper cones of sugar as they leave, sweeter than soda, sweeter even than Matthew. The pear taste on his lips I savor any time I eat a Waldorf salad. Suddenly younger and with him again, rewatching the caravan prep its procession to some next destination. Dechristened hearses and escort vans, econo trailers and towing booths and tosser stands from which any one of us should buy a brass ring to throw through the cardboard circle of a bangle's mouth and beyond its black drape. Its rough crepe synth linen mix, with its fabric stars affixed comically to the drape, behind which, if you dared peel it for a peek between shifts, while the vendor on break would be rolling a joint with his boo-boo stash, behind all that you'd see each $1.20 fate, each zill where it fell unseen behind the drape, into a daisy print bucket filled with them. They'd leave till near end, the carnies, or whatever we call them now, leaving two of them to lift it, sometimes more. Okay, last one. Thanks everyone for showing up. Migraine. It starts at the end. The lights of cars distorted to a burst. For a second like asterisks, extravagant and huge, arguments shining. In the exhausted fog over Mars, PA, then Puxatawney and New Stanton. On the turnpike in the rain, cars sweep and continue to pass en route to Erie or Breezewood, where their lives have been decided by now. Pulled over outside Somerset. In my eyes, all things look scintillant. Each thought a texture. Otherworldly filaments hang above a broke open rodent. Its head a hammered pomegranate. Useless, even to birds. It hurts to look at. Like blood coughed up in a bathtub. My old man, the story goes, right before he died, shouldered the Windstar to phone her, me, anyone on his way somewhere east of Kessing. A faint red fingertip print smeared on the dash, as though someone had crushed a clover mite. I guess we open to questions now. Is that anyone? I secretly hope not. Harmon.
I was following along with some of the poems. I was wondering, like, how do you decide where to play? How do you?
You brought it, Armin. You know, mean, partly it's instinct, I guess, but I say to students, each poem has a shape it's searching for, right? And that shape is the music, and that music is the form. Sounds good, I guess. But you know, when it comes down to it, I don't know. For me, it has to do with how it plays against the syntax or the sentence that's happening. If it's creating sometimes double meanings, sometimes it's. I think James Loggenbach talks about like the attenuated line versus the parsed line. Sometimes you interrupt, you deliberately break it at a point where like it's not clean, and that kind of draws attention to itself. It's almost like a hiccup. Other times you create double meanings by making it seem like it ends, but instinctual too, I think. In free verse, obviously in form, fixed form, it's not much of an issue. But. Thanks, Anna. Anyone? Man.
I was wondering if you work on one poem all the way through, or do you work on several at the same time? And then my second question is, I noticed that you changed the title of Carnival to Breakdown, and why did you make that decision?
Oh, I'm a tinkerer, constantly tinkering. So I change titles quite often with things, including the book. I went through many titles and many versions. I think for the second question, I wanted, once the book had started to come together, I realized that it was kind of about mental health to some extent. And so I started to choose some words that worked in a different way against the material in relation to the book, as opposed to being a poem on its own. And so breakdown had the double meaning of they're breaking down a carnival, right? But also, you know, happening in the context of the book, in which there's been breakdowns of my own and family members. And so it felt right to kind of shift the weight away from the carnival to the kind of double meaning, a different kind of metaphor with breakdown. What was the first question again?
Do you work on several at the same time, or do you work one through all the way?
That's a good question. I think I work at one most of the time. And that has changed. I think it changes. That's what I'd say. I think at one point I used to be real neurotic and have to do one thing at a time. Other times I'll have 5 poems open at once. Usually when there's 5 at once, it ends up becoming one poem for me. And it's just like 5 facets of the same thing I'm trying to do that I can't quite get at until it happens. That's what I would say. Yeah. That's all.
Thanks for your reading, Brian. And thank you to all of you artists here. My question, I think, is for all the artists here. In my profession, I work in the mental health profession, we are faced with an absolute epidemic, I think, of what I might call the opposite of art. Which is, of course,
America.
well, I'm not going to blame it on any one
No.
country, but the world that young people are growing up in is a world that is filled with the kind of suffering that I think you all addressed in your work. And I guess my question for all the artists is, how do you see yourself as artists in that world? My belief is that art is really the antidote to this, the problems that we're facing in the world of being able to be canceled with the push of a button. Any young person going online can just face this immense sea of invalidation. And art, I think, really offers an alternative, but I'm curious what your perspective is as artists.
I want to throw it to them now. It's a big question. I mean, I think people write for different reasons. You know, I mean, there are poems that are about celebrating love, poems that are about celebrating lust, you know, and eros. There's poems that are about politics. There's some poems that are, and some of them do all of it at once. So some of them are about suffering. My book tends to be, this particular book tends to be about that relentlessly, I think. But that's not everything. That's not every artist or every poet, certainly. So And even for me, it shifts between poems. I think in terms of like how artists operate in the world, in this world, I don't know. I mean, I think artists have always been outliers, and poets certainly to some extent are able to kind of be on the edge to see things a little. You know, I always think of like Salma Sharif. She's like, prides herself on being this kind of cultural commentator to some extent in her work, even though it doesn't read that way. And it's because she kind of isn't involved in the world you're talking about. You know, she's not as much engaged in social media quite as much. But I think that's just also kind of one way to do it. And, you know, for young kids and stuff, I don't know. I can't imagine. I grew up with televisions that were furniture, so it's different. As Death Cab says, information travels faster in the modern age. Which dates me, I think. I think that dates me. Maybe one more, does that seem right? Yes. Oh my God, online questions. That's a good question. Yeah, it's autobiographical, but you know, speaker's not the poet, right? And which is something I think a lot of people, I mean, you know, the poets know that, but some people kind of forget that, right? And so there is a lot, I mean, I take liberties with the things of this book. It's all based on my family and me, but you know, some of it is not factually true in the sense that like you change things, you shift things. It's like in Richard Hugo's Triggering Town, this craft book, he talks about like, well, if you lived on Orange Street or whatever, it needs to be maple, then make it maple. You know, so you take liberties with it. So I think in a way, yeah, it's based on my life, and we all write kind of based from our experiences, right? But you know, the idea of autobiography in poetry is slippery. The poet Ricky Lorenz, I'm going to quote a tweet. I can't believe I'm going to quote a tweet. I'm going to quote a tweet. Ricky tweeted something like, poetry isn't fiction or nonfiction. It predates genre kind of categories. And I tend to hold to that, which is that this book there are fictional aspects of things happening in this book. And there are other things that are 100% kind of fact, but the truth of the book is real and based in my life. Hope that's good. Okay. I guess I'm signing things now. Thanks, everyone.
I'll keep it going for Brian, just a little bit. Thank you so much for joining us here in person. Thank you everyone online. We're gonna have Brian sign some books right at the back desk where those flowers are. We're gonna wrap the line around the wall. If you need to know where to go, I will gladly tell you. And thanks very much. Get comfortable. We're open for a while, so thank you.
Yeah.